Madrid, Spain, September 18, 2025. Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, CDU, undertook his inaugural visit to Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez in Madrid, a meeting that was as much about symbolism as it was about substance. Yet behind the diplomatic smiles, sharp differences emerged, particularly over the war in Gaza, an issue that continues to fracture European opinion. From the outset, Merz acknowledged that Berlin and Madrid were not walking in lockstep when it came to the Middle East conflict. Standing alongside Sanchez at the Moncloa Palace, the German Chancellor openly admitted that the rift could not be glossed over. Friedrich Merz said, "It is no secret, however, that we both, and I would like to address this openly, are now drawing different conclusions from this. For the German government, the recognition of Palestinian statehood is not currently up for debate. We continue to view such recognition as one of the last steps, not one of the first, on the path to a two-state solution." This statement reflected Berlin's cautious approach, a position consistent with Germany's long-standing support for Israel. To Merz, statehood for Palestine is not a starting point but a culmination, an end to be achieved only after a series of preconditions are met. The path to peace, as Berlin frames it, cannot begin with unilateral recognition. But across the podium, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez made no effort to disguise how far apart Madrid and Berlin stand on this question. For Spain, the Gaza war has become a litmus test of Europe's moral responsibility. Sanchez, who has been one of the EU's harshest critics of Israel's military intervention, has framed the conflict in terms that are far sharper than those of his German counterpart. The Spanish leader has previously accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, a statement that reverberated across European capitals. Just days before this meeting, Sanchez had even proposed that Israel be banned from international sporting competitions until what he called the ongoing barbarism came to an end. At the press conference, he sharpened his critique further. Pedro Sanchez said, "I think it's very important to make it clear to the Israeli government that its strategy is completely wrong because it doesn't guarantee the security of its fellow citizens and because it is exacerbating the situation not only for the Palestinian people, but for the entire region." This message was not just a diplomatic remark, it was a direct moral and political indictment of Israel's strategy. To Sanchez, the war undermines Israel's own security, destabilizes the region and erodes Europe's credibility if left unchallenged. The exchange between Merz and Sanchez highlights a broader reality within Europe. Unity over Gaza remains elusive. While Germany and several northern European countries have stood firmly behind Israel's right to defend itself, nations like Spain and Ireland have taken an increasingly critical stance, calling for stronger recognition of Palestinian rights and consequences for Israel's military actions. For Sanchez, the conflict is an issue of principle. For Merz, it is an issue of sequencing, peace first, recognition later. Their positions illustrate the fault lines within the EU's foreign policy, where unanimity is difficult and national histories shape national policies. While Gaza dominated the headlines, the leaders also turned their attention to another thorny issue, Europe's defence future, specifically the Future Combat Air System, FCAS, a joint German-French-Spanish project to develop a sixth-generation fighter jet. Merz admitted that progress had been painfully slow. Friedrich Merz said, "We are not making progress with this project. We are both in discussions with the French government. We both want a solution as soon as possible. There is an agreement between France, Germany and Spain on this project. We are aware of the need for such a project, but the situation cannot continue like this. That is why we have discussed it. I have also spoken about it several times with the French president. We hope to find a solution by the end of the year so that this project can come to fruition." The Chancellor's words carried a sense of urgency and frustration. For years, FCAS has been pitched as Europe's flagship defence initiative, a counterbalance to US and Chinese advances in air power. Yet national rivalries, industrial competition and differing defence priorities have stalled the project. Sanchez nodded in agreement, stressing that Madrid was equally committed. But the reality, as Merz noted, is that Europe's defence ambitions remain entangled in bureaucratic delays and competing interests. Amid the weight of war and defence, Merz offered a lighter, more personal reflection. At the press conference, he spoke warmly about his ties to Spain, saying that he associated the country with some of his best childhood memories. This remark, while small, carried symbolic weight. For a chancellor known for his pragmatic and often stern demeanour, it was a reminder that diplomacy is not only about disputes, but also about connections, memories, and shared experiences. The choreography of the visit underscored both the warmth and the tension of the occasion. Cameras captured Sanchez greeting Merz at the Moncloa Palace, with wide shots showing the two leaders exchanging handshakes and polite gestures. The body language, however, suggested a relationship still in its early stages, cordial but cautious. Inside, as the two men faced the press, the atmosphere shifted. The contrast in their words made clear that while Europe's leaders may share institutions and projects, they do not always share perspectives. The Gaza war has exposed those differences in stark relief. Spain's insistence on taking a moral stand clashes with Germany's insistence on strategic sequencing. For Sanchez, the urgency of the humanitarian crisis demands immediate action. For Merz, recognition of Palestine must wait until the ground is prepared for lasting peace. The Madrid meeting illustrated, perhaps more than anything, the challenge facing the European Union in foreign policy. With 27 member states, each with its own history, alliances and domestic pressures, crafting a common line on Gaza is proving nearly impossible. Germany, bound by its historical responsibility to Israel, is reluctant to support measures that might appear to undermine its ally. Spain, shaped by its own political traditions and a left-wing government that prioritises human rights discourse, has taken the opposite course. The result is a Europe that speaks with multiple voices. The question is whether this diversity of views strengthens the EU by showing internal debate or weakens it by undermining its credibility on the world stage. As the press conference ended, the two leaders shook hands again, offering the familiar diplomatic optics of solidarity. Yet the words spoken moments earlier lingered. The Gaza war, once again, had proven to be more than a distant conflict. It had become a mirror reflecting Europe's divisions and a test of its ability to act with coherence. The FCAS fighter jet project, though seemingly technical, carried similar weight. If Europe cannot coordinate on defence innovation, how can it hope to assert strategic autonomy in an increasingly uncertain world? For Merz, the Madrid visit was both a debut and a reminder of the challenges that await him in Europe's capitals. For Sanchez, it was an opportunity to underline Spain's willingness to break with European caution and demand bolder moral clarity.